What up, Hoopers? You're watching NBA Now by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Marshall Green. In today's show, we're going to take a look at the top Nate McMillan replacements as the Atlanta Hawks have moved on from McMillan. I thought McMillan did a pretty damn good job when he first got to Atlanta. They went all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals a couple of years ago, but his time in the ATL is over, as Adrian Wojnarowski broke the news earlier today. And right now, I don't know where the Hawks are going because they're kind of stuck in the mud. They're currently the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. McMillan and Trae Young reportedly had issues earlier in the season, and it just hasn't worked out. McMillan's head coaching record was 99-80 with the Atlanta Hawks. Like we talked about, they had that Eastern Conference Finals run back in the NBA playoffs of 2021, beat the New York Knicks in the first round, went on to make the conference finals. And it's just, look, if you're not going to be able to get the most out of Trae Young, who is the face of that franchise in Atlanta, you're going to have to move on from him. And we have some coaches that are we're going to talk about in today's show that I think makes some sense, and guys that get the absolute most out of Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, Clint Capella, John Collins in that current roster for the Atlanta Hawks. Sounds like Joe Prunty is going to be elevated to the interim head coach. Prunty spent 2021 and 2022 with the Atlanta Hawks. He was also an assistant coach for the Suns in 2018 and 2019. Look, maybe he ends up being the head coach down the line. Sounds like he'll be the interim for the rest of the season. If he impresses Landry Fields, former Knick legend, and the rest of this front office that he did a good job as the interim, maybe they remove that label and promote him to the head coach full-time this off season. I do want to ask this question before we take a deep dive into the names that we have on a list that could potentially replace McMillan. How shocked are you at the firing of McMillan? I want to hear from all the hoop heads out there watching, and especially if you're a Hawk fan. Let me know in the comments section how shocked you are from this firing. Scale it from 1 to 10. 1 being you're not shocked at all. 10 being your pants almost fell off. You were so shocked. Sound off in the comment section down below. Woj also followed that tweet up about Prunty with this. He said the Hawks are starting a search for a new head coach immediately. Among the top characteristics in the search are player development, accountability, and getting the Hawks' offense and defense into the league's top 10. I think the word accountability is the word that stuck out to me because who are you talking about? Sounds like maybe Trae Young, maybe DeJounte Murray, maybe they weren't being held accountable with McMillan as the coach. Let's run through some of the top names. Quinn Snyder, in my opinion, is one of the most heralded names I would use. Guy that I'm very intrigued by as a potential McMillan replacement. He did great stuff with Utah. We saw that he was able to get the absolute most out of Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. I think it makes a lot of sense for Snyder to go and be the next Atlanta Hawks head coach. I'm a fan of him. I think he just is a great culture setter, a great teacher, and a great coach, and a guy that's just a good coach that's going to give you a competitive edge. I'm a big fan of Quin Snyder. I think he'd be really solid for the Atlanta Hawks. Kenny Atkinson fits those description and characteristics that Woj talked about. He did an electric job with Brooklyn when he was their head coach, but he did turn down a job last offseason to be a head coach. He said he was going to stick in Golden State. Maybe the Atlanta Hawks is a job that he is interested in and can lure him away from Golden State, but Atkinson, just like Snyder, is at the top of my list. I want everyone to sound off in the comment section for me. Who would you rather have as your head coach? Is it Kenny Atkinson? Is it Quin Snyder? Type KA if you're on with Dr. Kenny, or QS for Quin Snyder. A name that I think, or a guy that I think is one of the best basketball coaches in the entire world is Ime Udoka. But if you want a coach that's going to hold players accountable, how can you hire a guy like Udoka? He is a guy that couldn't even hold himself accountable. We know what happened in Boston. We're not going to touch on that. We know what happened in Brooklyn. Almost hired. Didn't happen. They ended up hiring or elevating Jacques Vaughn. He is now their full-time head coach. Udoka, he can coach ball. He knows ball. I don't know if he's ever going to be a coach, though, in the NBA yet again. Frank Vogel is the next name on our list. Big fan of Frank and what he did in his time in Indiana. That team was electric. They were well coached. They played hard. And he did a good job with the Los Angeles Lakers as well, leading them to a title. Kind of sucks and doesn't really make sense that he's not a coach anymore. But I'll tell you this much. The Lakers have not been the same team since Vogel has left. Honestly, the guy that I probably would have had number one on this list is Mike D'Antoni. If you are looking for a coach that is going to get the absolute most out of your franchise player in Trae Young, that is Mike D'Antoni. Everywhere he's went, point guards have had their career best. Even Nate Robinson with the New York Knicks back in the mid-2000s was electric under Mike D'Antoni. I could see it now playing a 5-out offense, or really 4-out with a high pick and roll of Clint Capella and Trae Young. Every time you come down the court, 7-second or less offense with all the shooters and athletes that they have in Atlanta. I know he's a little bit older, and I know he's a guy that's not really going to make you a top 10 defensive team, but I think the Hawks could have the number one offense in the NBA under Mr. Pringle's good old Mike D'Antoni. We have some more names to break down in a second, but first, make sure you guys are hooked up with our proud sportsbook partner, BetUS. Go to chatsports.com/bet and use that promo code chat125 for a 125% deposit bonus. You might even be able to bet on who the next Hawks head coach would be. You can also bet on who's going to win the NBA title. These are the updated odds following NBA All-Star Weekend. You got the Celtics at 1, you got Golden State Warriors at 5, and some teams in between. My bet would be the Bucks, plus 525. That's great value. I know ball, so if you want to make some money, go to chatsports.com/bet, promo code chat125, and put some nuggets over on the Bucks, because I think they're going to bring it home with Giannis. What about Terry Stotts, formerly of the Portland Trail Blazers? We saw him as well get the most out of a point guard that he had. He had Damian Lillard, he had C.J. McCollum, two guards in the backcourt that were ball dominant. Kind of the same thing you got right now. And Trae Young and DeJounte Murray kind of got the raw end of the stick. Stotts did in Portland. I think it'd be a name to monitor. Another name to think about is Becky Hammon, the head coach of the Las Vegas Aces. First year in the WNBA, she brought home the chip. We've heard her name be mentioned across NBA coaching searches, and she's earned it. She knows ball. She knows ball. I would definitely think that Hammon is a name that will continue to be brought up in head coaching cycles. I do want to ask this question before we get to the rest of the list. Will Becky Hammon get an NBA head coaching job soon? Type Y for yes, type N for no. She deserves it. She knows ball. Let me know what you think. Y for yes, N for no. The next name on this list is James Borrego, the former head coach for the Charlotte Hornets. He was there from 2018 to 2022. He was also an assistant coach for the San Antonio Spurs from 2015 to 2018. Did a pretty good job with the Charlotte Hornets. Not a guy that's high on my list for sure, but definitely a guy that I think could get some buzz in this coaching search. We would be doing it wrong if we didn't talk about these last two guys, because every time a coaching search happens, you hear, what about Mark Jackson? What about Jeff Van Gundy? My response is, there's a reason neither have coached in the NBA in the last 8 years. I love Mark Jackson. Does a great job on ESPN. Hand down, man down. He's great. Jeff Van Gundy, he's good as well. He's a Knicks legend. My thing is, if these guys wanted, or if the NBA wanted these guys to be coaches, they would be at this point. I think there is some reason that every team in the NBA continues to pass them up. Shams Charania actually put out a list, not nearly as good as ours. That's why you subscribe to the channel, because we know ball. He put out a list of guys that could get an interview. And ladies, he said the Hawks head coaching candidates are expected to include Bucks assistant Charles Lee, Kings assistant Jordy Fernandez, Warriors assistant Kenny Atkinson, Spurs assistant Mitch Johnson, and the G League South Bay's Miles Simon, and former Jazz coach Quinn Snyder. So we've given you about 15 names that could be the next coach for the Atlanta Hawks. Hopefully he knows about them Dream City. You know what I'm talking about. Who will be the next head coach for the Hawks? I'd go after Mike D'Antoni. Mr. Pringles, he knows ball. He'll get the most out of Trae Young. That's who I'd roll with. I want to hear from you, though. Who will be the next head coach for the Hawks? We appreciate everybody stopping by, even the Hawks fans out there. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit that big red button. Let's go.